What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Water for the Thirsty. I'm the guy who manages the conversation a little bit, just a little bit. I'm Jared, and with us is the room, Lorraine, and Kenrick. We're here to discuss some of the things that we follow in our Bible reading plan. Our Bible reading plan takes us through the Bible in a year. We are now into November, and since the last time we've met, we've been in the readings. We finished some of the readings of Luke, gone into first, second, and third John, and now into the Gospel of John. And then we've done some the time period between Ezekiel and Jeremiah. So we've been flopping between Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Chronicles, where those stories overlap. And of course, we've been in the Psalms. So our conversation is going to come from there based on the things that stood out to us, encouraged us, caused us a little consternation, pause, broad questions, whatever. It's going to be driven like that. Um, since we have a lady on the call, we'll give her the opportunity to go first, because that's what they say, no ladies first. So we'll do that
In
tonight.
2022?
All right, Kenrick, you got to lead them.
No. I want to make sure we were responding. Whoa. Who is that?
What's up, Chris? Hey, guys.
What's up, man?
Welcome.
Good. How you doing?
Okay, Ricky, right. In 2022 is not necessarily ladies first, but here today.
Well, I still believe that, but
that's why
you could be offending people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we're respecting everybody.
So that's why I said because she's the only lady, and not just because she is a lady, right? Because she's
Sure.
the only
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So that's contextual to hear, not general.
Absolutely. Yes.
In this moment, in this circumstance, when you post things on the internet without context, people will get
trouble. You're done. So. Sorry, go ahead. Continue, Lorraine.
So I had texted Jared. I was reading John 1, and the question, mainly I guess the trigger was when it says he came into the very world he created, but they didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. And my question was, how do we get to the point where we don't recognize the one we say we serve?
Mercy.
And how can we be in his presence and not see him? Rubbing shoulders with him, hearing him speak, seeing his miraculous work, and still be blind. How do we see our blindness? Like, can we see it, and how do we see it?
How do we see it, or how did they see? How did they not see it?
Like, so if you're the one that's blind, can you see? Like, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. Like, how can you know that you're blind? Do you get what I'm saying?
I guess blind people know they're blind.
Right, but
blind people who could see,
but not from context, just from.
Well, yeah, I guess people who could see first know that they're
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you've never,
people who've been blind from birth don't know they're missing it.
You don't know the difference, correct?
But then there are people who can see but still blind. So
I think they're seeing and they're not. What they thought is everything is not everything until they put on the good glasses and they're like, oh my gosh, there's colors, there's this, there's all these other things. So yeah, that was what's been plaguing my mind. Like, how do we see that? How can we be so close to him and not see him? And if we do get to that point, can we see our blindness?
I know.
Go ahead, Kenneth.
No, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say, your question was a good one in terms of them or us, but I do believe that by exploring them, we get to see us. So maybe we start with why didn't they see it, and then we can answer why we don't see. Unless you want to jump to why we don't see.
No. I when she first asked the question, I first went to them. Maybe it's just easier because I deflect. But
Yeah, I'm very introspective, so I'm always like, man, could I be walking around blind right now and not know it? And how do I know if I'm blind walking around? I did later on in the week think one thought was, I guess that's why it's important to be in community, because then other people can show you, like, you may not know there's more out there until someone else is like, you're not seeing the full picture, there's more. And then until you open your eyes and see them more, you're like, oh my gosh, this whole time I've been operating thinking I could see, and I've been
well,
blind.
so I think there, and I may be going off base here, but I think there is both people who lived during that time as well as us that live in this time. I think we we suffer from the fact that we also live in an echo chamber, and the fact that when you're in a particular circle, right, and the same thing is being spoken,
Mm-hmm.
right, it
Mm-hmm.
begins to shape thought, it begins to shape ideas. You begin to, you know, one of the things that we did when we were doing youth church, I can't remember, it was Jared. Did you introduce the thought when we introduced the we asked people to draw, or I draw an old man
Yeah. Yes. Well, indirectly. It came indirectly through something that I shared with you.
that
Yes.
you said, yeah, but it was like draw an old man, right? And the thing is when you see, if we put a picture up of an old man, it begins to change how you view and picture of an old man. But when you don't, right, and you're not living in that echo chamber, you allow people to have like their own experience and whatnot, then then you have the ability to, your old man looks, everybody's old man looks differently. And so, you see it with John the Baptist when you're reading through John, and you see it like, his like, he was able to identify, it was like he was standing in the crowd of amongst the Pharisees and everybody, and he said, right, he's here, he's among us, right? And even then, no one recognized him. And then it took again, him saying it again, and when his two disciples then left and fought, like, I just think that we fall victim to the echo chamber of what we're constantly hearing or expecting, and I think it makes it difficult sometimes.
So I agree with Lauren in the idea that there's value in community in hearing other perspectives. So not to be by yourself, but to Kenrick's point, you may be in a community that is that echo chamber. So there's
Mm.
that challenge. And then there's the communities that don't believe that anybody else knows anything but them. So they're not willing to hear from anybody else because you
Correct.
don't want to corrupt what you already know. So you are in that community. You are getting other perspectives, but perspectives that are homogeneous to yours, and you don't consider the perspective of other communities, right? And so that becomes a challenge. Um, I think one idea is looking through a fence at a big house. You only have a limited perspective of the house, right? Um, and and if you happen to run into the other side of the house, right, or somebody brings you a picture of the house, but from the other side, not from the side that you've been looking at the entire time, you're not going to recognize the house. I think that was one of the challenges that those people had, with Jesus. They had there's one little view of it, and Jesus came and brought them the other side that wasn't in their view, and they were like, "Well, then you can't be it." So that's
So,
that's
so I
one
got a
one
question.
contributing thing.
Is it even possible for us to get it right or to see it properly or whatever you want to use
From them,
for ourselves?
I think for us, it's
Can anybody do it at any time?
I I would like to say that we have a little more advantage because we've seen a lot more, because it's also, it's the reality. So, I try to put myself in a situation where I grow up in this town, right? I hang out with this dude. We're playing whatever for years and years and years, right? And then I run into him 15 years later and he's the Messiah. Like, I mean, just like, you're the Messiah? Really?
Dude,
For
I know you.
everything.
I know
Like,
you when we used to
I know.
when we used to
Correct. Like, it's I think it's that, right?
I
And I think Jared's analogy was great, and you're so close to it, right? And you're not only so close to it to where you see him, right, and you've heard of him, or whatever. Like, you know Nazareth, like, you know all that. So it's not only that, but it also was supposed to look different, right? It was supposed to be more like he was saving you not from sin, but from these Bama's right here that are continually persecuting us. It looked different, and so not only did it, did you know or have an idea of who it was, it was also not supposed to play out like this.
So I guess I'm hearing you say you think it is possible, but because it didn't fit in with, or may not fit in with what we think it should be, we might not see it. Is that right?
Correct.
I would ask this question to your question, Chris. Would God expect it of us? Would God use a method of revelation that we could not receive if it's not possible to receive it?
Well, I would say so. I was asking the question first of all. I didn't say which side of it I came down.
I know.
But we know who you are, Chris.
But either way, I was asking the question to
Right,
answer the
right.
people,
Notwithstanding Kendrick, yeah. And so, I mean, some of you do know where I'm going. I think my personal view, which I was not trying to sort of give at this point, but since you asked me, is of ourselves we can't, quite honestly. But the answer is not. We're not left out there. That's part of what God does. But He reveals it. He helps us see. But the point is, we need Him to help us see. Without Him helping us, without us embracing that, we can't.
So that is something I'm going to wrestle with out loud.
Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't want that to come in this early, but here we are.
Somebody's background is a little wrong. So let's
Somebody
all try.
cooking?
Who's
There
that?
we
Who's
go.
that damn mute?
That was Jewel.
Oh, okay. It is Jewel. Okay. All right. Cool. Anyway, I was just because I was starting. It was getting long. So one of the things that I am struggling with, not that what you're saying isn't true, but the one of the extracts of it would then mean like God is asking us to do something we can't do, which
Well, again,
seems all
yeah,
the
I mean,
character, which seems all the character for the God we serve, or the God I've come to understand. It just seems all the character.
yeah. I mean, I can see how you would say that. Although the way I look at it, which again is not the only way, and maybe not even the right way, but at least the way I look at it is, probably almost nothing that God has asked us to do can we do on our own. He's not asking us to do it on our own. That's the trick. We take it that way, but God is not asking us to live a certain way on our own. God is not asking us to give up sin on our own. God is not asking us to do anything on our own. He's asking us to do it, and He's also showing us how we can do it by embracing Him. So, that's where I'm coming from.
I still wrestle with that question a little bit,
That's cool.
because
So like the Pharisees, right? They, or the Sadducees or whoever, the religious sect, they had their perspective on what he was going to be like. And he was there in their presence. But they, like okay, so you asked the question, does God ever reveal anything and we can't, in a way that we can't receive? Right? Well, that was the question?
Well, does God expect us to do something that we can't do? That's really what I'm asking.
Does God expect us to do something that we can't do?
Knowing we can't do it. Would he
So
ask
I
us to
actually,
do something knowing
but I
that
think
I
that's
can't?
I think that's where I see where Chris is going with this, and that, and you see it throughout the entire Bible, right? I mean, you go from Gideon to David to, it's all these examples of all these people that were doing things that they just, they didn't, within themselves, they didn't have the power. There's no way, and I'm not saying David was 4'11", but whatever. He was much smaller than Goliath, and it just didn't make sense, right?
Oh,
So
not
there are
making
all these
sense.
examples. Go ahead.
Not making sense is different from being able to do. For example, when using one of those examples, when God calls Moses, he wasn't asked to do something he couldn't do. He was asked to do something he didn't believe he could do. Right?
The Bama couldn't talk.
Yes, but he could talk enough that God could use him to do what it is he needed to do, and did.
But was that because he had the innate ability, or God was going to make him talk where he needed him to talk to do it?
Correct.
Either way, he was able to do it.
So you're talking about the physical? Are you talking about the physical ability too?
So I'm gonna go left and come right just a little bit so you can follow along, right? What assistance from God did Adam and Eve need not to eat from the tree of life?
So I would say,
or reversed, to obey God's command not to eat to the tree of life.
The same I need.
Yeah.
the same.
I would say had they obeyed God, there were a number of steps that God suggested them to do that they did not do. So had they done those things, had Eve done them, then Adam done them, we would have been in a different scenario.
Did God expect that they had the ability to carry out that command, that one command?
Yeah. Well, he at least, I think in this particular example, the two things come together. I mean, what are you going to say? You could argue, and I don't think we're not trying to go there. You could argue that no man can take a step unless God takes the step for them or helps them, right? So all of that was God. But I hear what you're saying. I guess I think we are fundamentally agreeing, although there's some finity here somewhere. Maybe it doesn't matter that much, but I hear you.
That doesn't. So I would say I don't think he would ask us to do something we can't do.
I'll turn to the other side. I think the other side is truer than that statement. And the other side is it's the enemy's game to get you to believe you can't do it by any means. It's impossible. And that's precisely what God is saying. It may not be possible in your strength, but I'm going to give you the strength to do it. And right. In fact, I'm never asking you to try to do it in your strength alone. So the idea of whether it can physically possibly be done or not, I'm not sure is the most we can talk about it, and maybe it's important, but the idea is not whether we can, but it's whether we are going to grasp what God is making available to us in order to
But I think it's all like going back to Jared's example about Adam and Eve in the garden, right? I think it's everything that's so it's not just the fact that they were told not to do it and there's an expectation that they don't do it, right? It was the fact that he was there walking through the garden with them daily. Like it's all the other things that kind of play into it that
Yeah.
create the environment and create
Right.
that space to where it's like I'm giving you all of these things. I'm here with you. I've told
Right.
you not to do it. I'm spending
Right.
time with you, right? And so all of that should be enough for you not to even want to go there simply because I'm here with you.
Good.
Yeah, the
But
crux
if I
of
get
it
to
is
the
the
place where
choice.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the crux of it is what choice they're going to make, not their physical ability to do it or not. It's
Right.
it's the choice.
That's
Great.
the initial part.
And that's why I asked about the expectation, because my question isn't about the physical ability, but the expectation. Is God saying, I expect this from you, knowing that you can? And that's what I'm saying. I don't believe God does. And because they absolutely could have obeyed.
Well, I think
He
I would
gave
even
them
take it a
everything
different.
they needed to obey. So
Let
if
me
they
throw something on you. Throw something on. This may take some of you for a loop, but more and more as I live, I think we have. Okay, let me just say it and then I'll try to clarify it. I'm not sure God is expecting us to do anything, right? I think God is trying to show us what's best and then leaves the decision to us. But there's no expectation in the sense of, okay, I did this for you, it's transactional. Now I'm expecting you to do this for me.
not that kind of expectation, because but what we did read in Jeremiah repeatedly is, I asked you to do this and you didn't, and I had every expectation that you would. I planted the vineyard expecting grapes, and I didn't get grapes, so I was looking for this. It wasn't like I planted a vineyard expecting grapes, knowing fully well that the vine couldn't bear grapes. It was because the vine had the capacity to bear grapes that I was expecting grapes, and the grapes
Well,
didn't
I
come.
don't know, Jared. I think honestly, you're leaving out half of the story. God is saying, yeah, I expect you to do this, but I am promising you, that's the covenant I have with you. If you do this, I'll do this.
Right.
And that's
So,
why it was
no, I'm not leaving it out. I'm not leaving it out. I agree 100% that he is making. So if I tell my kid I need you to get dressed, and I choose the clothes, lay out the clothes, iron the clothes, right? Put on the light, make sure it's warm. He still has to put on the clothes, right?
Right.
Now, I have done all these things, yes, to facilitate and partner with him in getting dressed. But there's a part of it that he needs to do that I am expecting him to do. And I have the expectation that he has the capacity, because I know his intelligence. I train him. I taught him how to put on the shirt. He knows how to do it. He knows right leg first, left, one leg at a time. He knows all of that. So I have this expectation, and I have supported him. Now, what happens if I support him with all of that and he doesn't?
There's like two things. Like one, I think with the vineyard, or we're talking about the actual plant. The plant is supposed to produce grapes. It's not. He wasn't expecting apples out of it or oranges. So that particular thing was made that way. That's how I processed that part. And then secondly, there is this choice for obedience, or a choice to submit, that you are given. That's an initial thing. Like, I think that decision to be obedient, that a decision to submit, that he'll do what he needs to do with you after that part.
I can abide that. And I can abide that he does make them accommodations, as Chris is saying, and the help for us to do it. But
Jared,
if he's
are
providing
you
that help
implying-
for everybody, why are so many people unsuccessful, right?
Are you suggesting, Jared, and I don't think you are, but I just want to be clear, that there is something, anything at all under the sun that we can do without God or without his assistance?
That's a trick question.
No, seriously, no.
Here's
Now,
why it's a trick question.
sometimes I ask trick questions, but this ain't one of them.
That's a trick question, because on the surface, an easy answer is yes, choose, right? That's a thing that we can do without him. But since he gave us life, we still need to do that to be able to choose. So that's why I say it's a trick question, right?
Yeah, but I'm not meaning it in a trick sense. I think, at least in my mind, that's the fundamental crux of this question that you're asking, or Lorraine is asking us. And depending on how we think about that, will influence how we answer this other question.
Fair enough. Yeah, I just like, there's so many people who are unsuccessful with all the help that God has provided.
That is true. That is true.
Which then suggests that there's an element there. So, so we're going back to recognition, right? If God has provided all this thing for recognition, and he has given all this help, why are so many people failing to recognize? That then becomes the answer. Because if we can't do it without him, then why do we fail? Right?
Well, I think there are a couple of different things here, right? I think the original question was recognition, because especially within, this Jewish community, right? And in Israel, like, there was the expectation, right? It was kind of built in. When you talk about us today, I think it's a little different in that I think I think you can give, we're not necessarily in that type of society. And I think that you can give all kinds of hints, right? But I think at the end of the day, both come down to choice. I think now probably comes more to choice, and and it goes back to we talked about this a couple times ago. It's like I was playing golf with a guy today, and for whatever reason the conversation turned to this, and he started talking about purpose. Like, we were standing on the tee waiting on somebody. It was like he was talking about purpose or whatnot. And he was like, what I've learned as I've gotten older is that I have to be purposeful in seeking people out, and not only seeking people out, seeking what God's will is for me in their lives. So he was like, so when I talk to someone, he was like, there's several conversations I've had with people, and he was like, now I actually pray at that time and ask God what it is. Is there something that you want me to tell this person? Or inversely, is there something that I need to be looking for that this person is saying, right? And I think it's that intent, right? And inserting God in all of these aspects. And unless you're choosing to do that on a regular basis and throughout your lives, I think we are going to miss it.
I agree.
Right? Because there's so many things that are happening. And I think there's so many things, especially with technology and access and all that, that it's easily to pawn off to so many other different things, right? Technology, where, it's just what it is. We have apps for this and all that, where, if you're in tune with God, you realize that no, it's actually the Holy Spirit moving and putting you in contact with various people. And so I think a lot of it is just our intent and being purposeful and seeking God out and making sure we're staying close, especially from the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, is it Jared? To follow it, I agree with Kenrick. But what the statement you make is a true statement. There are a lot of people that are missing it, right? So is that a testament to the failure of what God is providing, and i.e., or he's somehow asking us to do something we can't do? Or is it a testament to the success of the enemy in distracting us from what God has offered to help us, and we're not really where we think we are?
We could look at it that way, and we could answer that question. No, it's not a failure on God's part. And yes, we can also say that the enemy is successful But to the question of can we recognize? Absolutely. The question is, do we recognize? Why or why not? Right? Because we can. And he wouldn't offer it to us if we couldn't. Right? And he's done everything that he could for us to. Like, first I'm gonna have you go to this text, and then I'm gonna go because it was in today's reading. It was yesterday's reading. Second Chronicles 36:11-21. Second Chronicles 36:11-21. While they're looking, I'm gonna bring in Gerald and Mezzo, who have been chiming in the chat. And he said, well, when we were talking about ability to, he said we talked about that last night in our Bible study on keeping the law. Mezzo says, yes, knowing that we can't do it on our own, he wants us to rely, trust on him. I believe that's in response to Chris.
Second Chronicles 26.
Second Chronicles 36:11-21. Then she comes in and says, I think it's that part is choice. And Gerald asks if Matthew 16:15-16 is related, but we'll come back to that in a second. So, Courtney, you have it?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. What up, Cliff? Welcome.
Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. But Zedekiah did what was evil in the sight of the Lord his God, and he refused to humble himself when the prophet Jeremiah spoke to him directly from the Lord. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, even though he had taken an oath of loyalty in God's name. Zedekiah was a hard and stubborn man, refusing to turn to the Lord, the God of Israel. Likewise, all the leaders of the priests and the people became more and more unfaithful. They followed all the pagan practices of the surrounding nations, desecrating the temple of the Lord that had been consecrated in Jerusalem. The Lord, the God of their ancestors, repeatedly sent his prophets to warn them, for he had compassion on his people in his temple. But the people mocked these messengers of God and despised their words. They scoffed at the prophets until the Lord's anger could no longer be restrained, and nothing.
Right, pause there. Pause there. This scripture suggests there was an expectation that they would respond to his actions, right? Or at least that they could. Maybe they wouldn't, but that was something they could do.
The ability to.
They have the ability to. Their failure was not a lack of ability. Their failure was a refusal. They chose not to, and there are a variety of reasons why they chose not to. But it wasn't that they couldn't. And to Chris's point, God provided them every opportunity. He didn't just send one messenger that some of them missed so that they couldn't. He sent messengers again and again and again. They were living in a place where the temple was there for many of them, and they could see it every day. He had built in practices into their lifestyle so they couldn't escape it. Their failure is not a I can't. It's a I didn't. And it's the same thing with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve's failure wasn't a I can't, or I needed something in order to. It was a I chose not to. I would argue that our failure to recognize is also not a I can't, but I choose not to. For a variety of reasons. And I'm sure there are a host of reasons that we could,
Good reasons? Good
What?
reasons?
I didn't say
No,
good
just
reasons. I just say a
excuses.
host of reasons. Just a host of reasons. It's not the same. It's not one reason for everybody. Is what I'm saying. It's a host of reasons.
But
all the reasons.
But all those reasons. Oh, sorry. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
I was just say all those reasons lead to I did not, not I could not.
But do those reasons also lead, like, even when there's a host of reasons, right? It still comes down to certain things, right? Ultimately, it's choosing whatever it is. And where there have been, Jesus told a parable about, like, there are all these different things that cause us not to attend the banquet, right? And there could be legitimate reasons, right? My mom's sick. I had to sell something. I had to do this. Whatever it is, right? But ultimately, it's choosing ourselves over him.
Yeah.
So there's only one reason.
And the other side is, what is it? Romans 1:20 basically tells us, at the end of the day, God has given us everything we need. So if whatever we choose, we're without excuse, right?
Correct.
So at the end of the day, I think we're all on the same page, but we're sort of looking at different facets of it. But fundamentally, we can't claim an excuse of anything. We can do it. Whether you technically believe God is helping you to do it or not, maybe it's not the most fundamental part of the question. The question is, if he has given you the ability, you can do it. If he hasn't given you the ability, somehow you could still do it, or he would not have asked you. I don't know. I think that it just comes down to the bigger question of what you believe in the first place. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, none of us are going to have an excuse. We don't make it.
Yeah, and you go back to, I mean, Gideon didn't believe that he had the ability, and this Bama put God through the test.
I would argue that he didn't have the ability, not that he didn't. He said, not only am I from the smallest house in the smallest town in the middle, I've never been a warrior. I've never done anything. And, so what makes him a valiant warrior? There was nothing in his life. He had no experience doing that. That's different than some other ones. So, but that's one extreme of the story. There are other extremes, like Jared brought up Garden of Eden. It's a little harder to say, okay, could they not walk on their own? I get it, or whatever. So I understand.
Yeah. So my failure to see how I could achieve something is not a testament to whether I can do it or not, right? Like,
No, I agree. I was suggesting in Gideon's favor, it wasn't that I was agreeing that he couldn't see it. I see no evidence in what I know of his life that suggests he could do it. Now, I don't always have to see it. Maybe God knew something that none of us could see, right? And that's how it happened. But given the whole story and how, at multiple points, God had to do sort of miraculous things that were out of the ordinary to help people understand what's going on here, I think it fits the pattern of God doing something that wasn't there. Again, we could argue it or think differently about it, and I think that's okay.
no, I agree. God does always supply. He does always add. And with his addition, the outcome becomes whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm thinking about it as we're talking. It almost seems like, some parts of the Bible, maybe the whole Bible, God is just explicit about it sometimes, and sometimes he isn't. God's working to help us to do whatever it is we want to do, or he's called us to do, is just take it as that's the starting point. That's given, right? Then let's talk. So we don't really have to talk about, I'm saying one way of looking at it is God helping us or not, because that's a given. He's helping. The rain falls on the just and on the unjust. It's just, I'm doing that for everybody, whether you recognize it, believe in it, think I'm doing it, or want it. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be breathing. Okay, so let's just start there. Then we can talk about what happens after that.
All right. Jerry, I see you deep in thought there, but know you have a thing that you want to push out, but you're trying to be respectful and let people, have their space. So
Really?
I must say here, Jerry, this is your option. This is your moment here.
No, that was actually a good exercise in patience, I think, because when you were going left, I was going left, and I waited for you to go left and come back, and it paid dividends. So we ended up in the same place.
Yeah, well, I'd like to hear your dream too. Rica's looking for that as well.
Because when we asked the question, does God expect us to do things that we can't physically do? I was going to say yes all the time. Asking Peter to come out and walk on the water with him, or asking the disciples to heal the sick, there's all this stuff that's physically impossible that he requires of us. Apart from me, you can do nothing, right? So it's not that it can't be done. It can't be done in and of ourselves.
Right.
And it's like he's stretching you, and he's getting you to understand, I am only asking this of you, which is impossible for you because I want to bring you back to relationship. Because if we're in relationship, nothing will be possible for you. So keeping, eating of every tree except this one is possible if we're in relationship. I'll come, I'll spend time with you, I'll walk you through, I'll tell you, the enemy is going to do this or that. Here's what you need to focus on. I will do everything if we're in relationship. And if you still don't do it, then that's not a him problem. That's a you problem. That is exactly how G uses. That is then making a conscious decision. I don't think I want to. So even going back to when Jesus was a kid, I am hard pressed to think Jesus was just. I'm sure Jesus was a square peg. I am
I'm sorry,
positive.
was a square peg?
Yeah, there's no way you could be the son of God and you would just fit in everybody trying to go to, whatever Bethlehem's version of clubbing was. You would stick out like a sore thumb. And I want to believe that there were people who, when they were with him when he was 10, 15, whatever, and when he became Messiah, they could be like, I could kind of see that. Because they would have seen things that just didn't resonate with him fitting in and him just being.
What do you do with John came eating and John came, not eating and drinking, and Jesus,
I was waiting for it.
was accused of being a drunkard. I'm not saying he was,
Right.
but he was eating and drinking with the best of them.
Even in secular context, that statement was made more because of who he was seen associating with, right? But
not just who are you associated with. I'm only emphasizing this because of the square peg idea. John would be the square peg because everybody knows John don't drink. Like
right.
I have a partner,
And he eats crickets.
Everybody know when my
And he
partner
doesn't
come around.
bathe regularly or shave, yeah.
Give him a shine. Not even though you can't even give him a shine. You gotta bring a soda and a water from a boy because he don't drink, right?
Right.
The pastor over here, he might take a shandy. He ain't gonna drink hard, but he's still gonna partake, right? But everybody knows that this guy don't drink. The only way to get a reputation as a drunkard is not just by association. It can't just be by association, and it can't be in contrast to the fella who don't drink. Because that's the contrast that's being made. This guy don't drink. This guy is a drunkard. Whether that's true or not, I'm not getting into that, right?
Right.
I'm saying that if he's a square peg, he would stand out as much as John did.
And not necessarily.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Not necessarily. Because
rectangular peg?
That is such a Kenrick statement. The point I'm making is, I think the people who were close to him wouldn't be surprised that there's definitely a different path, a different calling on him, something completely out of the ordinary.
I receive that.
He may not have fit in, he may not have been as square as John was in some contexts, but the Pharisees and Sadducees who would in relationship with him saw him as definitely an outsider outcast. He couldn't possibly come from a carpenter, and he's a carpenter, and he didn't go to the Islamic Judeo whatever school, and he doesn't have all these certificates, and he's not walking around this robe that's written all the good he's done on it. He just doesn't fit that mold. And what I think Jesus was purposely trying to illustrate to them is that when God comes to redeem us, it's not in the way, he is not going to conform to our ideals. What we've done is make God over in our image. And Jesus never fit into whatever we've made over into our image. I think even that's why, he might have wanted to shy away a bit for his first miracle, right? Because you could see his mom was just expecting him to fix it, which tends to suggest that there have been other situations that popped up and she just knew, he'd sort it out, right? Again, sticking out like, could you imagine there's some family emergency and she's like, oh yeah, dude here's got this and he would do whatever. And it's solved. Again, not fitting into whatever that prescribed mold is, right? And I think the message is really, we can see that if we're in relationship. spiritual things spiritually discerned. And if we're not in relationship, we will miss it. Not because he hasn't made everything available, not because the word isn't there or any other type of theological and, you know, whatever writing is there for us. But if we don't choose to avail ourselves of that, we will completely miss. That's just like, you know, something happens in your life and then you're like, how did I not see that coming? All these signs are there, but you just tunnel visioned it on something else and you miss it.
I receive that. Chris, you gonna say something? Before I come back to Lauren.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was a very good perspective, Jerome was saying. So, I mean, we've talked about it. I 100% agree. I think I was only other going to say, I think Jesus, I mean, how many 12-year-olds you know can put the senior pastors in any church, teach them? You know, that's kind of a square peg in a round hole right there, you know. And maybe the water turning to wine, that's the first miracle we know of in the Bible, but it may not have been his first miracle, right? The Bible says there are many other things that have been done. You can't hold them in all the books in the world. So I don't know when he started, but I don't know.
So to Lauren's question, how can he be so close and we not see him? I think that miracle, that first miracle is a good example of why I know a group of people who would say there's no way the God of heaven would facilitate drunkenness as his first act. Right? That he wouldn't perpetuate that. He's not coming first thing and we keep the party going. Because
Right.
what the people said at the party was, well, let's normally serve the good stuff up front, and then after everybody nice and high and tight, let's bring all these little things so we could just keep drinking.
Right.
Or they turn it around, they bring the good stuff after. We nice and we still drinking good. Woo! This is a bad party. That's what the people said, right? And if you're looking from a certain perspective about what God is and what God isn't, you would miss how him doing that revealed God. So you don't have to ask, what in that action reveals God that makes that action a revelation? Is it the drunkenness? Is it the wine? What is it? And if you're not, as Jerome said, within a relationship, you'll see it. But I would say even if it's not, if your relationship, you know its character, you know the character, you know what the indicators of him are. I would even argue many of us come from a line of thought where remnant is defined by X as opposed to something else, right? How do you characterize the remnant? What is it that identifies them? And I'm not asking necessarily to specifically go down a rabbit hole because we need to discuss the remnant, but I'm talking about the recognition of him and what is the things that reveal him that we would be able to detect, or we would need to understand to be able to detect. And could this particular action that was documented help to uncover that? No, that wasn't rhetorical. What's the big deal in there? What's the God in there? Is there God in there?
I dropped off. They're got on what?
In turning the water into wine. Is there a revelation of God in there?
Absolutely. Because the thing is like, it's, you know, and I think we try to make, well, let me not say that. So I think that there is.
Before you go on, Kendrick,
Huh?
I'll add this on. The person who recorded that in the Bible included that story because they believed it revealed him to be God. not just because of the magic trick.
Yeah, I think so when I look at that story, I think it's easy for people to get caught up in whether it's wine or alcohol or whatnot, right? I think it shows that God is very attuned to even the basic or like fundamental, and it was literally it was literally like, to your point, keep the like let's keep it going, right? The embarrassment, the the humiliation that would have been suffered, like all of those things matter, right? And it's not like it's the humiliation, especially culturally, like it's not just the humiliation of that night, it's what happens and goes on, right? So I think all of those things, I think, when I look at it, I see God in it, because I think that God is very attuned to kind of who we are, not only today, but who we'll be 3 weeks from now, a month from now, 3 years from now, or whatever, and understand that these moments matter. And so, by Jesus being attuned and saying, you know what, I'll do it, and his mother kind of baiting him into doing it, but him doing it, it wasn't about whether it was alcohol or not. It was literally about whether he was attuned to the needs of the people there, and that showed that he cared. And I think that's what God expects us to be, as we're dealing with everyday situations and dealing with people and interacting.
Okay.
It's interesting. I don't remember right now, but let's assume we were in that group, right? We were there at that party. Did everybody know that Jesus had worked this miracle, or did they just know they got some great wine, whatever it was? I'm not sure everybody knew. A few people knew, right?
Yes,
For
correct.
sure, for sure. Now maybe it spread because of gossip and everybody knew, but I don't know. The Bible doesn't really. I don't think the Bible alludes to that.
Everybody in the world knows now.
Right, they know now exactly. Exactly. So the question you're asking, Jared, could if we were in that group, would we have seen God in that? I think maybe some would, maybe some wouldn't have.
No, well, thank you for refining the question. No, that wasn't the question I was asking. The question
Oh, okay.
wasn't about if we were there, would we have known and seen God? It was someone has taken that story and said, look at this as evidence that he is.
I see.
I think
And,
it's a
and sorry, I'll go back and say the people who did know at the time may have seen as well.
I think there's a misconception that you have to be, quote, transformed to interact with God on such certain level. And I think this story is an evidence of I can interact with whoever I feel like it. And in so many ways, it may not be the way you expect me to. Right? Like I can be intertwined in your life. And in so many ways, I feel like it shows that I don't have a type. Like
What do you mean by that?
I think when we think of the miracles of Christ, this isn't one that we pay mind to very heavy to highlight as one of his big ones. It's like he's in so many ways promoting the drunkardness. Turn up, keep it moving, right? And it's to say that I have the power to do whatever I want to do. And if that means continue to party going in the name of whatever I say, then I can, right? If it's to keep the fun, I can. I think the part of the story that we're missing is who needed to see God in that light. He was grounded for someone.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes we may not share these grounded moments because it doesn't fit the type. I think Kendrick brought up a good point, like the embarrassment, it's kind of like being a West Indian and you run out of food. What? You run out of food? Like that's the biggest embarrassment to bring on a family. You have a family and they run out of food. And sometimes guys like, all right, listen, I'm not saying I'm for this or I'm against this, but I care enough about who you are and your reputation and what you're going through and all that stuff that I can just show up however I need to show up. And this is just between me and you. To your point, Jared, some people know of it, some people recognize it, and some of us were so turnt that it didn't even matter. Whoever bought the good wine, shout out to you. Like, that's it, right? And I don't have to fit your type. I don't have to fit your mold. I can do what I think is necessary for whoever's there.
That is a good point, and I think that's true. I believe that. I'm now reading parts of the Bible again, and it's just blowing my mind and bringing these kinds of revelations. God doesn't. I'll give you one quick one. Look at Abraham, right? Who of all the people in the world, no matter what religion you come from, believe in Abraham, they all idolize him. He's this great guy, right? The Bible talks about him. Hebrews talks about him. He's one of the pillars of faith, all this kind of stuff. But if you just look at the story of him and his wife and Hagar, this was the guy at the end of towards the end of his life. And then when, Hagar had the baby and then Sarah was getting, oh no, she got to go, and then he says to her, do what you want with her. What? What? Do you realize this is a man of God saying, poof, I don't care. This was business, girl. You know what this was all about. So it was no love in it that way. He was doing this. And you can't tell me that was a good thing, right? But yet, it's the same guy God calls all these good things. It's the same guy whose God's covenant is going through. It's the same guy that Hebrews talks about at the end. And that's only one example. I can give you 3 more of massively heinous things that Abraham did. Yet God still loved him, still worked with him, still did all these miraculous things. So I think Sharika is actually right. The way we romanticize the Bible in so many ways, in the ways we want it to appear, that we don't actually see it in the way that it actually is appearing sometimes, which is even more powerful.
But Jared, maybe what Chris and Sharika are hitting on is what the problem was for the Pharisees and many of the Jews of the day. They romanticize, so he's going to come in on a white horse and he'll set up a new kingdom and he'll save us from the Romans. And they made it into something that it wasn't. When if you look at most of his miracles, it was to the dejected, the disenfranchised, the delusional. It's the lepers, it's the woman caught in adultery. He keeps showing up in relationship in ways that people are like, why would he, King of the Jews, show up for these guys? I mean, look who he picked as his disciples, right? We know Peter was a cuss bud, but they were all like a bunch of, they were a basket of degenerates, right? And he turns around and uses all of them in miraculous ways. And yes, there's David. And yes, I mean, Jesus himself came from the bloodline of Solomon. We know the story of Solomon and of David because we keep romanticizing
in their line, absolutely.
When he's showing, no, this is just about relationship. And if you would be humble enough and have a relationship with me, I can turn this thing around for you entirely, regardless of how you started, or even at the end of your life, or
how you continue. There's a passage I just read it with my kids a little while ago. It blows my mind to this minute. I must have read it before, but I read it a few weeks ago. Psalms 89, and if you go to around verse 27, God's talking about my love will last forever, and my mercy I'll never take from you, no matter what you do. And he says, even if your children should go away from me and forget my laws and do whatever, yes, I'll visit some iniquity with them. But he says, nevertheless, I'm still going to be good to you. And what I said I'm going to do is going to do. If it came out of my lips, it's going to happen no matter what. I mean, it's when as I start to think about that just changes the whole perspective on who God is. God's saying, you can't, if I say I'm going to do something for you, it actually doesn't even matter what you do. I'm going to do that thing for you. Period.
Sharika will get this illustration as we take what Chris is saying and come back to Lauren's question. How come they missed it? How come we don't see it? Why we don't see it? it's like if you hear that God is into project management and all you know is waterfall, and God shows up doing agile, you ain't gonna recognize it.
Right,
I-
right, right.
I don't even
right.
recognize. I don't even recognize this.
Did you get my illustration?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Because
Yeah.
you don't know what you're looking at. All right.
Yep.
Courtney, you got it.
Yeah,
I think-
Yeah. You
All
know.
right. So,
Oh, everybody that got PMPs and all this, like whatever.
so
Don't
at
forget the
least
eye.
very high level for anybody else who might know, just conceptually.
Can we get the Sesame Street?
Traditional project management is you identify all the things that need to be done up front. You get a good plan, and then you step through the plan to the end. Right? It's basic conceptual. Agile is we don't really know. We have an idea what we want, but we don't have all the requirements, but we need to get started. Let's figure it out and do it in small incremental pieces. But you don't have any hard and fast on methodology. You just kind of have a framework on how to operate.
You also don't have hard expectations because you understand that things will happen along the way, and I have to adapt.
Oh, that's me. In every aspect of my life.
Right.
But if I'm using the term project management and I have this idea, I'm looking for all the requirements up front. And when I come to your meeting and you go in, we're just going to run for 2 weeks and do this. And then what? What's happening after that? We'll see at the end of the 2 weeks.
We'll figure that
You're
out.
going to say, those people don't know what they're doing. They aren't project managers, right?
Yeah.
But they are. Because they're operating in a framework, a way of operating that's different to you, even though it may have a similar label. And I think, Lorraine, to your question, part of the reason we don't see it is that we operate in a framework that's different to God. And because we don't understand the framework, we can't identify it when we experience it.
We've also been, it's not even just like we don't understand it. We've been trained that it cannot come in this form.
Correct.
Thank you, Debbie Grant Winter. I appreciate you. Like
She
I was
said that
like-
earlier. She was like you, Kendrick. She didn't understand.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Winter. 'Cause I was
So
like, I don't know myself.
I'm still a little blind to the answer. So I am.
Half hours later.
I was singing and I was listening. I was like, okay, wait, okay. All right. So the answer is okay.
State the question.
So when
I never heard the question.
The answer is D, all of the above.
I never heard the question.
Hold on. I gotta look at it again. Hold on, I wrote it down. Lord, hold on.
Not to talk for you, Lorraine, but I think you were saying, how is it possible for people to be around Christ and God or whoever and still missing? You know,
Right.
that's
And then
basically the point.
right. And then how can we see our blindness? So I hear you guys saying, okay, we each may have our preconceived ideas of who he is and how he moves, right? We talked about him covering the family culturally or whatever kind of way he covered them in that situation with the drink, the wine, and whatever. And I guess my other thought was, okay, well, what if he didn't cover him and he let them get embarrassed or humiliated? Like, not everybody got miracles. Not everybody
Mhm.
got, you know what I mean? So either way, he's still God. like he's still a him regardless if you've got those stories or those experiences or whatever. But I still don't get because you know, blind, you could either be blind from ignorance, you could be blind from regression, like your vision slowly based on choices you make, maybe, you know. But when you're blind, you don't know you're blind. So my question is, how do you know that you're blind? Like, how you're operating in life, like me and God is tight. Like, we here, and you get to the end, he's like, I never knew you.
No.
What?
Look,
What
well,
do you mean?
here's the part. I think spiritually, in your heart of hearts, you know you blind. Like I mean, so for instance, when you, like, I know for me, you ever walk into a room and you're so focused on something that somebody be like, yo, Lorraine, you ain't see me waving at you? Be like, yo, honestly, I ain't even see you, yo. My bad. I ain't even see you. Has it ever happened to you? And the reason why you don't see them is because I'm focused on the one thing that I think I've already have what I'm looking for in my head, and everything else doesn't even work for me. And so if you, as a Christian, Christ seeker, whatever you want to call yourself tomorrow, today, and the next day, have an idea of who God should be, and it is not necessarily aligned with what you read or didn't read, because a lot of times we just hearing what people think God should be, you've convinced yourself that you see him. But if you were to take a step back, in most cases, we see what we want to see. We see the God that we want to see that works for us. I don't believe that anybody can honestly say, I've been seeking God with everything I have, and I'm still caught off guard on the day of judgment and be like, yo, really, son? I really missed you? It's not possible. You were still putting yourself first and whatever made you feel comfortable. Because all the stories in the Bible shows that if God wanted to get your attention, and if you were open to getting his attention or being caught in his attention realm, he'll even put you in the belly of a whale. He'll have your wife be a prostitute. He'll kill your firstborn. He'll make wine when the party's supposed to be done and I want y'all out of my house. Like, he will make himself known. So it's
So
in so many ways insulting to get to the end and be like, yo, I really missed you. No, you didn't. You didn't want to see me. And that's a hard reality.
Something drastic for him to.
It doesn't even have to be drastic. It has to be, in my opinion, I'm gonna let go of all my preconceived notions of who you are, and I'm gonna just show up and let you show me. And it can be as small as, I gave you a little bit of extra wine today, and in a way, you know, nobody else could have given it to you, and nobody else had to see it. But a lot of times we fit God into the box that works for us, so we're a little bit comfortable, but slightly uncomfortable, but enough that it doesn't really trigger my world to be put upside down. And then you wonder why he's like, you didn't know, because you didn't want to get to know him, because getting to know him meant that you had to change. And I don't want to change.
Yeah,
I ain't gonna, you sound like Dame Dash.
I mean,
like who?
Not Dame.
You're fine. But no, those are facts.
The reality. That's the reality of the situation, right? It's the reality is, if we're being honest with ourselves, it's kind of like, Lorraine, if me and you talk every day, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody said to me, yo, you know, Lorraine told me that you a piece of crap. And I'd be like, yo, you right. She could have said that. The worst thing, what you gonna say? Trigger, you telling me you talk to me every day, you don't know that I wouldn't have said that about you? You wanted to believe that, because you know darn well I wouldn't have said that about you. And now I'm insulted that you would even allow somebody to come in our camp and have this conversation. So either we weren't talking every day, or you just wanted to believe that I treated you that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a scripture that God, you know, I think God takes what you're saying, Shrika, even the next step. It's not even just, although everything you said I think is true, that we're in communion every day. I'm really trying to find you, and if I'm really honest about that, I will find you. God says, you will find me when you seek for me with all your heart. He's saying, it will not, just what you said, it will not be possible if you put everything into finding me that you can't find me. That is, I will commit myself to make that be an impossible.
So you can be in a phase of blindness, and at some point, you would have to see him, and just choose not to see him. Is that what?
You have to. You ever got drunk? Ever?
All right, church.
Right. All right. So I've experienced this a couple times in my life.
Right.
Things were
I've never
not
been
the way
drunk. I've tried.
that they appear. Right?
Dang. I think that's the next show, Cliff.
You wasn't lying with the bishop. That's why. If you was lying with the bishop, you would have been successful.
Right. Things do not appear as they should. Right. And I am going to, as Jamie Foxx said, I'm gonna blame this on the alcohol.
Right.
Right. And if I don't want to see Christ, I'm gonna blame it on everything but the fact that I chose to drink. And I knew that if I drank, I'm gonna make bad decisions. So it's not even like it's willful, it's willing blindness. Like I'm willfully walking into this situation knowing that I ain't gonna see the things the way they should be. And I'm okay with that.
So everyone blind is blind on purpose.
At some point, if
After
they
a
are
while.
on the road,
At some point.
at some point,
At some point, okay.
at some point,
At some point.
if they've
At some
chosen the route, at some point they're blind on purpose.
So I said this way. What we just read in 2nd Chronicles, they didn't seek after God, but they had no excuse because God came with Hosea, he came in Ezekiel, he came in Jeremiah. Like, there was nothing you could say that God didn't show up and communicate that. Here's another example. Those Pharisees, like we can read about it in the book of John. I think it's John chapter 9, 10. When the guy who was blind from birth received his sight, and the whole court about it,
He brought everybody.
and they all sitting and they asked the man, so how did you receive your sight? Is he been blind from sight? They bring his mother, they bring his father. everybody
Yep.
testifies. Now everybody know that they didn't have nobody who could heal somebody blind from birth but God. We don't have the technology for it, we don't have the science for it. The fact that this can only be but from God. And them fellas sat there in that council, had that experience, and still decided that Jesus wasn't from God. Well, they acknowledged that it had to be a miracle from God, but decided
But it wasn't from him. Yeah.
God provided every opportunity. And then Jesus stands up and exhales when everybody crying over Lazarus being dead and says, I'm doing this so that everybody will know. Lazarus come forth. It had a whole crowd of people, and everybody see and went home and tell the mother and the father and whoever else they tell. And then people was coming and breaking down the door to be in the house to see the Lazarus that they hear about. And he wasn't the only person who got raised from the dead that people were able to see in a massive thing. That you couldn't escape. If you lived in that place at that time, you couldn't escape that. So if you're still blind after you hear about Lazarus, God
after you've seen Lazarus for
your
yourself.
consciousness.
I also want to add, Jared, some people may say, well, everybody was doing miracles back then, right? So for instance, even in the case of Moses was doing a couple things and the wizards was doing some other stuff, right? Like, but there was hierarchy in the miracle working, right? In Moses's miracles, all right, my stuff gonna eat your stuff, right? You want to do this, I'm gonna up the ante, right? To your point, we ain't never seen nobody do this from birth, and he upped. We've never seen anyone raised from the dead, and we've seen the sick.
Always comes back to New York.
Right? Like, sir, why are you coming for me today?
Right?
Like, why are you coming for me today? I have been gone for 2 weeks, sir. Like, 2 whole sessions. Let me live. Thank you very much. But what I'm simply saying is there's been levels to the miracles. So you can't even say, oh, well, this is something that we've seen every day. No, it's always a little bit further up. Wow.
Gerald, crazy.
Oh my God. I saw that joint on the side and then it came into.
Oh man.
But Jared,
So-
to show you
so
the
my-
point,
so
it's
my
just like with
question- Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
It's just like with the Israelites as well, right? I just led you through the Red Sea, pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. Surely he brought us out here to starve to death. What?
What?
Right.
Yep.
So how does that? So my question is today,
Mhm.
right? Because there's a lot of things that can get in the way of the, and I talk to guys all the time, and I was talking to a dude the other day, and we won't get into the conversation, but it ended like, oh, but it's kind of, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. Da, 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 right? I don't know, and I'm assuming there are other people that have had conversations, and he's fine. Like, it's not like, it's, he'll be okay. Everything's gonna be good. Family's gonna be fine. His kids are gonna be good. Whatever. At the end, is it my conversation and maybe a few other guys that's like, this was your opportunity? Because it's much less than, a serpent, a staff turning into a serpent and eating another serpent. It's much less than all the other things. They're just conversations, right? Not everybody's going to have that big, dramatic event. Not everybody's going to have a whole court full of people, where everybody's looking at and seeing the obvious. It's literally, it could be guys that are just making decisions, and you only have these few opportunities that have been presented to you, and those opportunities maybe as just friends and people that have that are in your lives that come up and have a conversation with you.
You mean like Nathan the prophet? to
Was that
David?
again?
You mean like Nathan the prophet did to David?
He was still a prophet, and he was acknowledged as a prophet. It's a little different,
Oh, yeah. Good point.
right?
Like the old woman who David's soldier sent to talk to him, or better yet, the wife of the man David was riding to kill, Abigail.
She did, yeah.
So is the assumption, I mean, maybe there are certain lessons that I don't need to learn on my own. I can see that Chris went through it. I'm good money. I don't need that no more. So I don't think everything is the same for everyone. Some of us need to be boxed upside the head, and some of us can see what Chris went through and be like, I'm good money. And I think that's, even though I hate it and I don't do it often, that's the value of the testimony of the saints, because some people are really saved by your testimony. And don't have to experience anything. We could literally be sitting around having a drink and Chris is telling me about something, and that could be that's all that's needed. Going back to, I don't fit your mold. I'm gonna work how I need to work, and I know the person that I created, and they don't need a monumental thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Sharika. I mean, quite honestly, I think that's more of the gospel than all the other stuff we've made it. Because there's another text that says it's the goodness of God that leads men to repentance. It wasn't say keeping the Sabbath. It wasn't, knowing the doctrines, knowing the 27 beliefs. It wasn't, all these other things that we make it. That, the law. The Bible says the law is a schoolmaster. That thing beats you down. It's not the thing that's leading you to Christ. It's the goodness that you see God doing to you when you don't deserve it. You're like, why wouldn't I serve you? And the more you understand that, and you get that from people's testimonies, you get that from all these other things. I'm 100% with you on that one.
It's 28. It's 28 fundamental beliefs, Chris.
Oh my gosh.
Gee, exactly.
And counting.
Right.
Yes. Yes, in 2 more years we'll have 29.
Right. I will say this, going back
Thanks,
to
JC.
the wine. One of the things that I am discovering through the scripture is the concept of agape isn't fully appreciated and understood, and so it's not, so that we can't recognize God through it because we don't understand it. We're measuring God by everything else, 27 fundamental beliefs. And you saw it with the Pharisees. They were like, he's a Samaritan. If I touch him, I'll be unclean. I saw him beat up by robbers. And this is the story that Jesus tells. I'm passing around him. Agape is, I have active concern because I perceive your intrinsic worth. God, the goodness of God is God demonstrating agape. You're made in my image. So I have active concern for you.
No matter who you are.
No matter who you are, because you're mine.
That's right. No matter how you live it.
Because you're mine. That's how you get value. Correct.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
And so I demonstrate that active concern. Sometimes I have to spank you because I have active concern, but sometimes I will bless you and shower you because I have active concern. And I want you to feel and experience that so that you will demonstrate active concern for me.
That's exactly right.
Right? And we will demonstrate that. But because we don't perceive God like that, we don't necessarily recognize when people have that level of active concern that's not selfish, that's vested in the other thing or other person or the object of that infection. That is where God is showing up, and that's what the characteristics of God looks like. That's when they say
because we can't see it, we are not doing that to other people, and we are the ones that bend out of shape, beat them over the head with 27 beliefs or 28 beliefs and all these other things, and think we're doing it the right way.
Correct.
Yo, but that's confusing, man.
Tell us more.
It's confusing as a human because there are certain things that's built within me that tells me that there's a standard. Well, there's a limit to right and wrong. So yes, you say love the sinner but hate the sin. The lines get blurred.
Is that within you, Cliff, or that was taught to you and it's now in you?
Whether it's taught to me or regardless, it's in me. You know what I'm saying?
So, Cliff, I think the challenge that you are talking about is that word love, right? In English, love has all kinds of meanings.
Yeah,
and what do you mean when you say love the sinner and hate the sin? If I say have active concern for that individual, no matter what they're doing, that brings a whole lot of clarity on what I need to do for that person and what I don't need to do for that person. Because if the sin is not helping them, right, I am showing active concern by, depending on the context, and it will become situation to situation, which becomes the framework of Agile, right? The framework would determine how that is working in this situation. But the active concern will be revealed. Sometimes the active concern is kick him out of the house, let him find his way. That is an act of love. Because that is me showing concern for his well-being. But then I have a child who I can't afford to kick him out. Him I have to keep in the house. Because I know him, I understand him, and my concern for him is determining my actions. And I think that's
another way of explaining it, that one, I agree. On one side of the coin, and I would add the element, what is God telling me to do? God may say, push him out of the house, right? Or her out of the house. On the other side, God may say, don't push him out of the house, because if you push him out of the house, what influence will you have on leading him in the right direction? Right? And we take upon ourselves God's role and say, push him out of the house. Oh, he can't be in my house, whatever. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong necessarily. I'm saying too often, I believe we make ourselves the arbiters of what's right or wrong rather than God. And at the end of the day, it's not always love that is seen in what we do, even though we say that's why we do.
Here's the thing. your definition of love is shaped as an adolescent by what you experience. And so if you've always been told or experienced love to be a positive thing and disdain to be a negative thing, action based, until you're old enough to decide to explore that yourself, that's where the idea of love looks this way and dislike looks that way, and the confusion of separating the sin from the sinner comes into play. And many of that is generational, as in our parents ain't nobody know no better, nobody else knew any better.
She just called you old, Cliff.
No, I did not. Like, what I'm simply saying is you're only as good as you were taught. And until you challenge the thought of what you were taught, not to say it's right, wrong, but to validate it, then you really don't know what it is, right? Like, discipline in so many ways, if not received. I don't remember many times when Debbie Grant Winter hit me. So I'll put that out there. But I remember my grandmother used to give me some good ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had we not had conversations after, because she liked to explain herself. If you just hit somebody and you walk away, you're thinking, man, they don't like me. And I did something really bad. And this is my punishment. It's a different conversation when you're disciplined and you have a conversation. Let me tell you why I felt like I had to do this. And a lot of us never experienced the why, just because our parents didn't feel the need to do it. And so now you see discipline as a negative thing, which is going to be even harder when you experience a God that shows love through discipline to say, I have to kick you out in order for you to realize what to do with your life. And therein lies the confusion.
Fair enough. I will say, though, that changing the role and perspective, even if you don't have the conversation and you've been taught the bad way, you still, a change in perspective helps you see why something may and may not have been necessary when you change perspective or you change role.
What causes you to change perspective? You had to experience something else that challenged the thought.
Well, no, maybe, but like, so I go from child to parent, and now I have active concern for my child going astray, right?
But you experienced it. But that's my point. Like, being I'm not a mother. But I hear that when you switch roles, whoa, okay, I've experienced something. I've experienced the love that my parent claimed they had for me when they beat me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I pushed you out. So that experience forces the change of perspective. And then you challenge the old way and say, perhaps I should try something new.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But doesn't God provide those relationships in this life that we live for those reasons? Like, Sharika is not a mother per se, but she has a pet, right? She has to have trained her dog. You see what I'm saying? So there's an opportunity there, again, like you said, for that perspective to change, for that shift. I think I kept seeing in First John, he kept talking about this loving one another, and that was just such a big part of us understanding God's love. And I see there's opportunities for that with parents, with children, but they're also caretakers. They're other people. If the parents didn't get it right, maybe you've come across somebody else in your life, maybe a teacher or maybe a mentor, someone that will come along and give you that. And then you can relate that back to, oh, this is kind of what God was doing for me too, and this, or done for someone else or something. So we're always using those relationships to sort of guide our understanding of those things. And it might take time, like you said, there are things that I understand now as I'm a little bit more older, a little bit mature than back then when I was younger. I didn't understand the discipline, like we said. I was like, what's this about? Like, why? Now you get it, like, oh, okay, this is what I needed. But I think that's the same thing for us. Like, as we mature and our relationship with God, our understanding of why he's doing it, sometimes it doesn't make sense at that time, but we'll eventually could get there. It might take other things to happen. You might need to be put in another position, be a long life. Now you need to mentor some in a position to help me, in very critical situation. And now you kind of start to understand God a little differently. So, along life's journey, you can have that experience where you can gain that understanding sometimes.
I think sometimes we may not even need a relationship. I mean, I'm sure, we might have read a book, looked at a sermon by whoever, T.D. Jakes, Darius, Daniel, somebody, and a light bulb goes off. And it causes a shift in perspective. It might even be, a course you take in college, whatever the case is. There are things that, and that goes back to the kind of relationship Christ has with you, where he will know what will get to you at any particular point in time. It could be a conversation, a relationship, like I said, a book you read, and he will put it around you just so you can have that shift in perspective, because your life goes as your mind goes, right? You don't go to the next level, you go to the next level. So if this isn't shifting and changing, then so all he really needs to do to bring you around is to give you enough influences, because he won't force your will, to help this to shift. And once that happens, then
Yeah. And let's add on the layer of he's the guy who goes after the one sheep. So it's not like you might run into it.
you will.
He's coming behind you. You have to now decide whether you're going to receive it or not, whether you're going to ignore it or not.
And his reputation depends on it.
Yeah.
That's actually the biggest point. It's
Yep.
not even about us. It's about vindicating his name. Absolutely. That's why it's the goodness of God, because God is coming after us no matter what. He's not forcing us to do anything. He's just trying to show us how good it is and how bad it will be to go the other way. And it's all about vindicating his name. It's not about how good we are or how much of the law we forget. Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Gerald is just on a roll.
He is. I'm sorry. I heard what you said, Chris. But
Yeah. Gerald
Yeah,
is
he
gonna
is.
come in there. Yeah.
I missed what he
man.
said. What did he say? What did he put in there?
Oh, so he was responding to Jerome by saying, one of the books that
My
the
goodness.
light bulb for him was Bill Cosby himself.
The chocolate cake. Yes. Wow.
I
guess-
would say one of the things that did it for me was You Saved Me by Robert.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Robert Kelly.
Right. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think Jared, that's even one of the reasons he picked the bunch of disciples that he did, so you could see the different. Because you had, who was that? Luke, who was the doctor? Luke, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Who was always like straight laced, well educated, but you don't really hear about Luke stepping out of himself and behaving unseemly like Peter did, right? And then you had Paul. Was it Saul who became Paul, who was a zealot on the? So you see all these different experiences, and he's just stepping in, meeting you where you are, and leading you across, right?
Here's the other thing, Lorraine, that Jerry just made a point about. We have all of these different characters in the Bible, and sometimes we get distracted because our focus is on David and Paul and Saul. And we forget that the main character is God. And so we don't necessarily see the unifying characteristics that makes what is true about God for Saul be the same thing that is true about God for David, be the same thing that is true about God for Philip. And we don't get the picture of him, because we're not painting the picture of him, we're painting the picture of David and the picture of Saul and the picture of this, the picture of that. But if we look at all of these characters and go, what do they show me about what God is? You start to get a singular picture, even in among the diverse operations of this God. You get to see the same kinds of things happening in different ways with different people, but the same things.
That's so true. That's so true.
And when you have that picture, it's better able to identify him and recognize him. Which leads me to one of the things I was asking myself coming out of this week's reading. I was alive in the time of Jeremiah and Hananiah, where Jeremiah is saying, stay in this awful situation and settle in, and make yourself comfortable because you're gonna be here for a while.
1 minute. Mhm.
But then somebody else saying, God saying, nah, don't listen to that fool. In 2 years, your deliverance is coming. How would I know which one to listen to? Which one of these two messages aligns with what has been said about God? And how do I pass it?
It's funny because when I hear you say that, they both suck. They both guarantee at least 2 years of suck.
2 years is better, but 2 years is better than.
I'm speaking for me. When you tell me something's gonna suck, it could suck for 5 days. It's sucking, right? Like there's at least 2 years of trash. And so in any situation, get comfortable. Does that sound bad? Like, and let's just see how it plays out. Because at the end of the day, they're both saying the same thing. It's going to be trash. At least 2 years.
It's gonna be trash for 2 years.
At least, and we could
So you
revisit
might as
this
well.
at month 23.
So you might as well get comfortable.
You might as well just get comfortable. Because 2 years ain't short.
Yeah, but in 2 years, I am renting as opposed to buying a mortgage, right? And I'm saying it like that because I make a difference. I'm preparing to leave in 2 years. The job that I'm taking is not a long-term job, and I'm impacting the quality of my life. When God is saying, yo, go get that mortgage, you better buy the house.
Settle in.
Right? That's the message coming from Jeremiah. The message coming from this one is, you can rent because we going just now. And then in 2 years, when you realize you ain't going just now, you just waste 2 years and you give these people all this money and you still have to come and figure out where your next move is because you didn't listen to the message. And so, to my point, how do we, to the Lawrence question about blindness, right? And our painting a picture of God and being able to detect the picture of God. How do we then,
But you have to ask questions at that point, though, Jared. At least for me, both parties are saying trash. All right, cool. What is it that you want me to do during this time of trash? And I feel like if you start to ask clarifying questions, you start to seek a little bit more information. Which way you're supposed to go is going to come forth. Like one person might say, "Hey, don't live above your means. It's going to get trashier if that's what you choose to do because you ain't getting out of this." Another person may say something else. Like I think at least the God that deals with me, the character of God that deals with me. That doesn't mean there's multiple gods or people. Let's not do that. But they're demigods. We can do that later. Anyway, the person that deals with me expects me to dialogue. Like there's a difference between accepting and asking for more information. Like I feel like you have to be an active participant in your life to ask certain questions if you're in a position that you're not sure, and not asking from a place of I want it to be one or the other. But I'm hearing 2 messages, bruh. So let it rain on the carpet and then rain on the concrete. Oh, wait, what? One more time for me. One more time. Rain on the concrete, not on the carpet. And I think he honors that. So if you're truly confused, why not dialogue? But if you don't dialogue, it removes yourself of the accountability, which most humans don't want anyway. And then you place it back on, I didn't know what to do, which is not necessarily true.
But that's why he said, my sheep hear my voice. If you turn to the left or turn to the right, you'll hear a voice saying to you. So if you're not dialoguing, you used an analogy earlier where you and Lauren talk every day. So surely Lauren knows your voice physically, but she also will know, it's likely Sharika said that, or it's unlikely Sharika said that. But that's only because of the dialogue.
And also, as you said, Jerome, the notion that I move my head, like you think you hear something, you're like, yeah, that's my mama calling me, right? Like, I kind of adjust my posture a little bit.
But I think also intent and all that kind of goes into it. You make it practical for me and my kid, like with the girls. Like, I'm not. If I tell them to do something, right, and they hear I said something else, or someone comes and says, "Well, just do this," whatever. Like, I think the intent,
like your daddy told me to tell you to do this.
Correct, right? I think all of it goes back to they know, to Sharika's point, and they know who I am. They know what I've said, or was it Jerome? They know what I said. They know who I am. They know what I expect, right? I do think that although there's dialogue, I think that at the end of the day, at least in my perspective, God speaks to me in a couple different ways, right? And anything outside of that is, I usually have to go back and say, is this exactly what you? Because this isn't where you didn't tell me this. That's this way. Sorry, there are times in my life when I've heard God speak, and it's been a very consistent method in which He speaks, right? You didn't really get anything outside of that, and if it's
you're not
something
mixing
else,
it up.
huh?
I know you're not mixing it up.
Because he always he kept speaking in that same method. Like it wasn't different, right? But I think going back to the conversation, it's being able to have the dialogue and go back and ask, right? Not ask the dude that came up and said, you're good after 2 years. It's going back to where you started and saying, is this where you want me to be? And it's having those conversations.
Henrik, this reminds me of something that happened with me and a friend a couple months ago. I told them I didn't do, I didn't do something. Someone called them and was like, yo, me and Sharika did XYZ. They called me and was like, I can't believe you did XYZ. And I was like, I said I didn't do it. And they were like, but Cliff told me you do it. That's great. I said I didn't do it. And we went back and forth for a couple of hours. And I was like, there was a better hours. Not on some, I should say more so me being like, I ain't gonna argue with you, sis. I said what I said, right? But it boiled down to me saying to them, you would have been better off calling me and asking me, did you speak to Cliff? Versus calling me and telling me that Cliff said that I said I did it. Because I already told you I didn't do it.
Correct.
And now you coming at me as if I'm some liar or something. And they were like, I never thought of it. I was like, yeah, like your posture's wrong. Like you weren't looking to inquire. You just had Cliff stuff trump me. Like, and now I'm the bad guy. And it was really a hard situation.
No, it's because I'm older.
Right.
I think it was old.
Okay, there you go. Because I'm old.
I feel like God may feel similar sometimes when we deal with him. Be like, yo, I said what I said. You could have come to me and asked me.
100%.
Did I change my mind? Did something happen in the last couple of hours? But you came at me sideways. And I don't think we do that.
You're right. In that same story I was quoting about Hananiah and Jeremiah, Jeremiah says, how many prophets came before me? And they was all saying the same thing. And now you think God just switch it up and say in 2 years? What I'm saying is consistent with people are prophets. So
absolutely.
You already have that on the record, which is kind of what Sharika is saying. I've already told you what this is. So yeah, a lot of it has to do with us, our own motivations, what we want, and hoping to twist and bend it into what we want to make it.
I want to add one more thing to that quickly, Jared. It also has something to do with who we're entertaining. Are we having conversations with God as we should, or are we having conversations with the enemy, right? Because the minute you start having conversations with him, it's amazing how quickly you can fear left. I was rereading Genesis just randomly this week, and it's funny if you look at like the language. So Lucifer makes one assertion, and in no time Eve goes completely left field, and she starts saying things like, "Oh, God says we can't even touch the tree." God never said that. He just said, "Don't eat of it." And you start seeing where just having the wrong thing being whispered in your ear, you start having all sorts of weird conversations, and before you know it, you're down a completely different path. And you have disaccustomed yourself to hearing what God is saying. So Jeremiah is saying, going back to that example, I've said this, 400 prophets before me have said it. And they having the wrong kind of conversation, and all of a sudden so it's not on God. It's not that God isn't saying it. It's not that he hasn't made his way plain. It's not that he's changed his mind. But we have itching ears and we go. And you may not have intended to go as far left field as you did, but just by entertaining the wrong kind of conversation, showing up.
So to your question about blindness, one of the things we are discovering or we have articulated is that God is intentional and clear in his messaging. He's intentional and clear in his revelations. If you're not getting it,
That's a huge problem.
if you don't see it,
But yes, I agree with that. But again, I think if and when we leave things like that, it implies something about God, right? And I think that
what do you mean?
is not
What does it
really.
imply about God?
So if you're not getting it, it's because you got a problem and God is up here. He's doing the best and you got a problem. And I'm not saying that's wrong, right? But contrast that with texts like Jeremiah 33:3. It says, ask me, and I will tell you great and marvelous things that you don't know. That's what the text says. It's exactly what the text says. So it implies that, even when there is a problem, and I'm doing everything and you still don't get it, I'm still doing even more to help you. And if you would just ask me, I'll show you. Now, so that's not really negating what you're saying, Jared, at all. But it's
Clarifying?
I don't even know if it's clarifying, but it's sort of, I don't know. I feel like the element that often gets missed when we talk to each other, when we talk to others, it's like God wants this. And if you don't get it, we're going to burn in hell. If you don't do it, you're going to burn in hell. And the part that's true at some level, but the part that gets left off is really how much God is actually willing and wanting and trying to do now to help you get it, and will help you get it. You don't have to be that way. It can change, and that's just as much as the good gospel story as the laws themselves that you're supposed to keep or whatever else it is. And so I'm less in my walk now trying to bring that side in more as the end of the story rather than just do this and go to heaven or do this and go to hell or whatever. You know what I mean?
I received that. I guess my pause was in the context of the conversation where one of the things that Sharika had mentioned about, hey, we didn't give up a good faith effort. Is really when I left it open, I was really saying, if you don't get it, it's because I didn't do my good faith effort. Right. In light of all his effort.
And it wasn't a criticism. It wasn't anything. It's just something now that is a part of me that I try to bring out all the time. Maybe it's bad, but
yeah. There's an old joke about somebody dying on top of the roof when the flood came, and then they went to heaven and asked God why they didn't save them. That goes with this. You heard the joke. I'm not telling the joke. But the person's on the roof saying, God, please save me because the flood is coming. Then the boat comes by and say, come on, get on. And he's like, no, God's going to save me. And so on and so on. It keeps going. And then the helicopter comes and it's like, God's going to come on, get on. It's like, no, God's going to save me. Then they drown. Then they get to heaven. They mad at God. And God's like, I sent you boats. What else do you want me to do? It's kind of, kind of goes with what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Cliff, did you say you weren't going to tell the joke? And then you told
I didn't tell the joke. I didn't tell the joke, man.
You told the whole joke.
I paraphrased it.
You summarized it, Chris. You get,
Yeah, thank you. No.
Yeah.
You didn't put it in book format.
There you go. There you go. There's a difference. See, you're not vibing with what we're talking about. We've been talking
It was
about
like
this all night.
that's exactly what the joke is. Yeah.
All right. Did you get your question answered?
That's the key right there.
I'm processing.
Okay.
I take that as a no.
So, Lorraine, tell us what you think it should be. What should be, if this is a reality that's hard for you to grasp with, what is the reality that you think should be?
Well, I mean, this is basically going to be my takeaway at the end. I think that, so I believe there are areas that I am blind in, right? Knowingly and unknowingly, right?
I'm sorry. Gerald is a nut.
And I think at the end of the day, I would need to prioritize or consistently keep on prioritizing my relationship with him. Because there's sometimes blindness doesn't necessarily mean I'm off track. Blindness could be me thinking I'm off track and I'm not off track. Does that make sense? Like you're going, like we talked about boxes and how we think things are supposed to look and be. Like when things are, for example, like she talked about, Shrika talked about, your adolescent and how you process love and that that care or whatever. When you experience negative things or you feel like, I have moments, transparency here, I have had moments where I feel numb, right? And so the question becomes, are you still connected to him? Like, you're doing the things.
Right.
There are plenty of people that do the things and I'm not even with him. You get what I'm saying? So
Yep.
that numb feeling to me is blindness. That you don't have that certainty, that sight to say, like me and God, regardless of what this looks like or feels like, I'm on the right track. So that numb feeling or that just that hate, I love clarity. I love things to be straightforward, like that. But when things are ambiguous and I guess I'm biased in the way, like I may expect things to be a certain, not necessarily like it has to look a certain kind of way, but I expect certain details and certain information to confirm to me that I am in good standing.
I was gonna say that, Lorraine. Like, I wonder if one of you are, I don't know if you've ever looked into your love languages or anything like that, if it's like words of affirmation. And it sounds like there are times where you may need that affirmation from God in ways or in times of your doubt, right? And sometimes he may entertain that and provide it for you.
Sometimes.
And other times he's like, sis, you know what a toilet is. You don't need to turn the light on. You know how to get to the bathroom. Like, just go to the bathroom, right? And you're like, no. I redecorated. I moved the soap. No, you know what a bathroom is. Right. And
but
so
in those moments, I don't know how to determine that as I know where the thing is, or man, am I in a totally different bathroom? Like, am I in the wrong place? Or
I don't know if that's blind or like, I think there's a big difference between blind and uncertain, right? Like I heard you kind of use them interchangeably. And the only thing I could think of was like, when I take my glasses off, I don't see as well as I want, but I'm not blind. Right.
What and levels to blindness.
But
what I was gonna say is, for instance, I may not see something from afar, but the closer it comes to me, I know, sis, you about to hit your forehead on this thing, right? Like, and so you should move. And I feel a part of you may need to trust your relationship with God a little more, that you would know that even in this time of uncertainty, when it finally comes to your face, you're actually going to move. Or your father would say, move, Lorraine. But again, I heard one thing that you say is just like, Ma, nobody asked you. Um, uh,
I was like,
one
I didn't hear her say that.
one of the things that I heard you say though is that you need a level of control. And this
I know
might
that about me.
and
I got a problem. I got a problem.
conversation.
Well, I guess that's what I was
I
gonna
felt
say.
that's how I am. Go ahead.
No, finish. Go ahead.
No, that's all I was gonna say. I know that about me, not about other people, but
Right, you're
about
right.
me.
And that could be the, unfortunately, that could be the pain in your hip that reminds you that God is God, similar to what Paul had to feel, right? Like, I'm gonna have to make you uncomfortable for you to understand that there's a dependency and it's always gonna feel that way.
But the blindness also could be, if you look at Peter when he's in the boat, right? And if Peter was blind, he would have just stepped out because he would not have known whether it was ground or whatever. He just would have obeyed and done it, right? And so, I don't necessarily, you know, when you can't see it, it's not necessarily that you're in a bad space. I think that, I think it's you continue the one thing you do is you continue to communicate, right? And that's the way. And God, there, countless promises and examples, but His intent is for you not to, is for you to be saved. And so at the end of the day, He's going to, or months or years or whatever it is, he's going to have you where He wants you to be as long as you're listening and obeying Him. And I think that's the key. So even on sight, I mean, those, being blind isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world.
I would add, one of the things that has been helpful to me in is remembering, because of these moments where there's uncertainty. Sometimes you need the security of understanding this is who dude is. Dude is faithful to his word. He's faithful to his covenant. If he enters in covenant relationship with you, his money in the bank. But you cannot detect it by the circumstances. The circumstances that I'm experiencing are not reflective of that. And that is sure regardless of what I'm experiencing. And it makes me think about one of the texts that came in Genesis about Joseph was, in all his experiences, God was with him. While he's sitting in the jail, God is with him. And again, that's a thing about perspective. Am I with you? Are you with me? If you're with me, then water in the desert is not a problem, right? Because
even though it looks like a really big problem when I'm in that desert.
Right. And to be fair, not having water in the desert is a problem. Right? We're not minimizing the problem.
Right.
But I have a little bit more confidence because I'm like,
you brought me here.
Right? You here with
Yeah.
me. And I think one of the things that oriented me to that was, the whole idea of fear is relative, and God's response to fear is, fear not, I am with you. Fear not, I am with you. So Sharika was helpful in establishing and reminding me that the idea that God is on today, off tomorrow, on today, off tomorrow, and put your relationship status in on and off is not true. He's always on in your relationship. The relationship is not in jeopardy unless you end the relationship. And so anything that is happening, you can count on him committing to the relationship. of course, you have your part now, but you can count on him there. He's not just switching on and off. All right, you're not my boyfriend today. Today you're my boyfriend. You didn't act right today, so you on your own. Tomorrow, if you act right, then I'll change my mind. That's not how he just do it. And I know that was one of them things I had to shake, because I used to feel like that sometimes. But that reminder that, hey, Julian will always be my son, and I will always love him that way. When he's obedient and when he's not obedient. And he shouldn't believe that because I spank him today, I feel differently about him.
Well, I'm with you on that. My concern about my status is me, my part.
It goes the opposite way too. What Jared and was it Kenrick, some of the others were saying. So it goes the other way. That means that what God has said about the relationship I have with him, if I have it, that relationship stays intact no matter what my situation or my feelings about it or my thoughts about it may suggest to me. You know, what God has said and what it is, his reality is more important than mine. An example of that is I think the 3 Hebrew boys before they were about to be thrown in the fiery furnace. You see, they didn't know that they were not going to die that day. That's what their response. The king said, "I'll give you one more chance." And he said, "Look, king, we don't have to think twice about this. The God we serve can save us out of this fiery furnace. But if not, if I die today, if my situation looks like there is no God in my life and I don't have anything, I'm still going to believe that what he said and what he's done for me and what he can do for me, even if after I'm dead or anything else, is still one of it. My feeling about my relationship with God is divorced from my circumstances. It's based on that knowledge and in his word and the Bible and his presence alone. It's the same thing that Jared was just saying, but on the reverse. So what it is what it is both ways, regardless of what comes into my life or how I feel about it. Mm-hmm. That's a higher level of trust. That's a higher level of belief. But I've come to realize that's where God is trying to get us all. We don't believe, we many of us, including myself, we are with God when we get the goodies, and when we don't see the goodies, where is God? God's saying, I'm still here, but I've decided in this situation, it's better for you not to get the goodies, not because I want to see you go through some problem, but I'm trying to get you to a higher level. I want you to believe in me no matter what is happening out there. And why would I do that? Because at the end of time, just before I come back, that's what you're going to need to get through. Because that enemy out there, I'm going to take away my restraining power. He's going to do some stuff on you that's going to totally take you out, and you will have no reason to believe that I'm even close to you, except what I have told you and what you have come to believe about me. And that's what's going to keep.
I will add an additional level of reason, Chris, including what you said. I think Joseph helped me believe that God is, for better or worse, sickness or health. It's really just we in this together. Whatever life throws at you,
Period.
I'm here with you, whatever it is.
Period.
And so I'm not here to necessarily make the situation comfortable or uncomfortable. And there may be times where our active concern may cause me to have to put my hand on the scale. But whatever life throws at you, whatever you experience, whether I'm involved or not, is you and me together. And
that's right.
It appears that he prioritizes that over the circumstances and how the circumstances actually play out.
I would say that, and his goal is to get us up there. You know, that's his primary objective. If he can do that by giving us a lot of things down here, he'll do that. If he knows that it's better that I don't give you some things, or I give you some hardship, or I give you some of both, he's in that road and he's okay. But his goal is to get us up there, and that's the primary. Our goal is to be comfortable today. Our goal is to be comfortable tomorrow. He wants that for us if that helps us get closer to him.
Right.
Mr. Fields would always say, "Trust him even when you can't trace him."
Yes, yes.
Gerald says the hardest thing to do is let go and let God. For me, that's my blindness. How to let God in my life is my struggle. So I'm with you. Reading His Word, reading this Word is helping. Yeah, the thing about trust is, relationship and experience. It's
Absolutely.
difficult to trust somebody you don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who you don't know. And I think one of the things that the things that he's going to reveal to us that we're not going to know. One of the things he makes real simple and clear for us is who he is, or at least what he's about, right?
Yeah.
His character. I mean, and he goes out of his way to reveal it over and over and over, and form after form after form. And one of those forms is his son.
Yeah.
If you see me, you see my Father. You know what he's about in me. So what is he about, and who is he? I think he's explicit in that.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, because you're right. If we don't know for ourselves, if we don't have that relationship, how are you going to trust something at that level that you don't know, right? So that implies then to get to that place, there's several stages we're going to have to go through. We're going to have to recognize I need to get to know him. I got to go through the process of getting to know him, not just a little bit, not a date every once in a while, but be married to this brother, to God, in that type. And then as that comes, then I get to a place where I can trust him at that level. And that's why there's so many times before we get there that we have these feelings. I've had them, we've all had them. Is God really still with me? Especially after what I just did or what I just said, But he's trying to get us beyond that.
And Abraham helps us remember that don't happen overnight.
That's right.
It wasn't until his 25th year of the promise that he was like, you'll go up and do the knife thing.
That's right.
25
That's
years
exactly
later.
what we were saying in the beginning. That's exactly right. And I see those stories that, look, that brother was almost 100 years old, 75 years old. Okay, I'm still struggling at my age. I got a chance. I got a chance.
25 years.
Yeah.
Even in my blindness, I need to be reminded that God can remove those scales, so I need to trust him wholeheartedly.
Yes.
All right. We at 10:09. I think it's time we could close up. I know we didn't get to Kenrick and Courtney, but for those, we'll bring them in next time. We could come back to them. And anything that goodies that Cliff have. But tonight we're just going to go around and do our takeaways as we kind of close this up and transition to the end. All right, Courtney, I'm gonna start with you and then come around to Jerome at the bottom.
All right, definitely. I think that we're taking away. I think we definitely spoke about the incident in John with the water to wine, and for me, I'm just taking away that the necessity of that moment, and for the disciples believing on him in that instance. Got to see Mary's faith between her and Jesus, like mother relationship to kind of like, all right, now it's moving in. It was a shift. Then I think that there's this emphasis on Jesus being this joy bringer, like you guys talked about, with him coming in and seeing the situation, that could potentially have been, filled with grief, and he came in that situation. It's an example of that.
Good. Lorraine?
I gave mine.
Recap?
I guess like I said, I'm still processing. I guess just trying to be patient in the process. Um, I know not to think that when things are all good, like or bad, that it shows that God is either for or against me, kind of thing. Um, it's just those in the middle moments where it just feels like dead silence, like the deafening of silence, or just a void, or I don't know how to explain it, like just a nothingness. um, just remembering the last thing he told me, even while I'm in that space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember them days. I remember them days when I had to say to myself, when there's nothing being said, go back to the last thing. That's what I used to
Yeah,
almost hear him say.
yeah,
What did I
yeah.
say last to you? I'm not going to tell
Mhm.
you anything else because you have that already. Just hold on to
Mhm.
that till I give you something else. I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word. Chris?
Yeah, I like that one. That's a good one actually. And there's a lot in there. I think that's part of what, one of the things you see in the Old Testament a lot is when God says, "Follow me," children follow him for 5 minutes, then they go away. Then he comes back and says, "Don't you remember this? I took you out of Egypt. I took you out of." It's trying to tell us that thing. Remember what I did. That's one of your strategies to help you make it going forward. I really think that's a good one. For me, I guess the big takeaway is that God is good and faithful to us in spite of us, no
Right,
matter what we do.
right. Chris?
Um,
You're not old,
Mine is
by the
going
way.
to be when. Say it again.
I said you're not old, by the way.
Oh, that was going to be my other one, but but my first one was going to be when I guess when the rains and the floods come and um, I have to move to the top of my roof and ask God for salvation to get on the first boat. Yeah,
So
and
ask
I'm
him if
not
to
going to
get
tell the
on the
whole
first
story.
boat. Are you gonna ask him if to get on the first boat?
He just getting on.
Right,
I'm getting
right.
on the first boat. That's it.
Word.
And the
Tina?
second one was I'm not old.
Bishop?
Bishop, it's good to see you, Bishop.
I'm back. I was gonna make a Little Kim quote, but nobody would have gotten it but Kendrick. So, so the joke doesn't fit it. It's only Kendrick. Um, One thing I wrote down here was no one on this call is blind. We may be uncertain, and there's a difference between being uncertain about a situation and being as uncertain about God.
Hmm.
And just reminding myself of the difference between the two and the danger that lies in both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Good one.
Word. Karen?
Yo. Um it's what you just said. It was go back to the last thing. I told you. That I mean I had something else, but that was that that's very yeah.
Word.
Mm-hmm. Said it
Jerry?
all.
Sawyer.
I think he's trying to tell you, say the other one.
That's
He's
why
like,
I'm
it's
giving
my
you a minute.
turn.
You might have to, yeah.
It,
Again, Jerry?
Um, that whole idea of uh, the need for relationship and how that relationship brings the clarity you need. I think that is it. Just staying in that relationship, understanding that the only variable in the relationship is you. He's a constant. So You just have to keep yourself in it. Don't worry. He's yeah.
Mhm.
I think mine came from something Sharika hinted at is when in doubt, ask a question. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
He wants the conversation, he wants the relationship, he wants the interaction. Now there might be times where he's like, what did I say? And he don't say nothing, but he still wants the interaction. And you know, the remedy for blindness is consultation. Like, yo, what
Mhm.
is the curiosity? It's the pursuit. Um, yeah, that's what's staying with me.
Yeah.
All right.
Sully put out something a couple of weeks ago, man. It said the statement said, "True story. God always works it out. We just panic."
Yep.
I like it.
So I'm gonna say okay.
Yeah.
I vehemently disagree.
After-
But
I was about to say John the Baptist was sucking a mango and wake up in the morning and God worked it out. You know what I'm saying?
He did. He
God
did.
worked it out.
he did.
He did.
So that's where I'm challenged by what that actually means.
Was
But
he
yeah,
sucking
but
on
he said
mango?
worked it
Was he
out.
sucking on mango?
He was sucking a
Here's,
mango. He didn't know it
here's
was
my
coming.
perspective, Jared.
He,
All,
he,
The way
He
I
shouldn't.
said it, I came to that in my own thinking before I saw that. I said, you know what? The reality is, if I'm still here, he got me through it,
Mhm.
right? One way or another, I'm still here. He got me through it.
Or if
So
you're, or if you're
what's that?
not, he saw something that
Don't start.
Well,
I'm
if
just.
I'm not here, then I'm not here. but if I'm here, then he got me through it. That's a 100% track record. I'm not saying he got me through it the way I wanted him to, or I didn't, but how many of us have had problems that were so big we didn't think we were going to make it? I've certainly been there more than once, but I'm here. He got me through it, every single one of them. So that's a better track record than whatever I think might be the answer or what anybody else is telling me. I'll
I
stick with
received
it.
that. I received that. I need to have in mind the concerns of God, his perspective. That's the one that matters.
Mhm.
The Lord's framework is based on his agape love and principles, which we can have confidence in despite our uncertainty in our circumstances. I think that is the one for the road.
Yeah, yeah,
I give
that's
you
a
a
good
couple
one, Charles. Mhm.
I'm gonna leave that one up while we decide who's going to pray for us to close. Any volunteers? You know what? I'm gonna do it this way. We only had one woman when we were starting, and that's why she led. Today we only have one visitor, so we're gonna ask him to pray.
Now, who's the visitor?
I was gonna say, we looking at
I used to
Pharaoh or
be
Chris?
carefully. Is that Kendrick? Kendrick,
Chris,
is
if you had to ask,
It's Pharaoh. It's Pharaoh. It was Pharaoh. Pharaoh, you want to lead us?
I'll pray. By you. Heavenly Father, thank you for being with us, for guiding us, for directing us, for not ever giving up on us, even when we give up on you. Continue to be with us and save us in your kingdom when you come, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. It is always a pleasure. And of course, I know you have all these other new responsibilities, but anytime, every time you feel like you have a moment and you'd like to, there's always a space here for you. We are here every first and third Friday. Most of you know that, but if you don't, we're here every first and third Friday at 8. And we do, as you can see, have a handful of other spaces. So if you want to join the conversation actively with your voice and face, just hit me up or hit us up info@waterforthe30.com and we can share the link and you can, any day. You don't have to make it an ongoing thing. You can sit in today and then 2 years from now decide, I want to do it again. However, we'd be glad to have other voices, perspectives, all of that. If you don't have a copy of the reading plan, download it from the App Store or from the website and get the PDF. And if you like hard copies like Courtney and I, email me at info@waterforthethirsty.com and I can organize to get you one. Yeah. All right. Until then, anything else, anybody? All right.
No, we're good.
Until then, drink up, drink deeply, and see you on the 18th. See you on the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
Drink up.